The purpose of this video is to describe the Microsoft Word equation editing features for fractions and radicals. When you create an equation region with Insert or with Alt equals or Alt numpad plus, the equation tab of the ribbon becomes available. The right section of that tab contains a set of structures pull-downs. These allow you to create expressions primarily with the mouse. These pull-downs have two sections. The top is devoted to formatting expressions flexibly. The bottom of a pull-down has common expressions to use to save time. For fractions, the pull-down has 4 templates. The first 3 control the orientation of the fraction bar, and the last lets you create fractions with smaller text. When you choose one of the templates, it inserts the structure at the cursor location. Structures use boxes with dotted borders to indicate placeholders. They can be filled with more complex expressions. When the selection is not empty, when you select the placeholder, the selection is placed in the primary placeholder position. This gives you more flexibility as you build an expression. If you want to input a fraction with the keyboard, you use the slash key to indicate the fraction bar. Then you use space to convert it into professional formatting. If the numerator or denominator has a more complicated expression, you group them with parentheses. Once again, you use the space bar to combine them. Word uses the parentheses when they're needed to group the components of the expression. A feature available to edit fractions are the context or right-click menus. The mouse's right button opens up a menu that is also opened with the menu key on the keyboard. When you are working on a fraction, the context menu allows you to change the appearance of the fraction. For example, it lets you change the fraction to the other options from the fractions pull-down under Structures. So if I choose Change to Skewed Fractions, it is the same as if I had used the Skewed Fraction option in the pull-down. When you have the fraction as what is called stacked, you also have an additional option of removing the fraction bar, which can be useful sometimes. The context menus in the equation editor are very powerful. They allow you to change many of the attributes of each equation. The contents of these menus is controlled by what's selected in the equation. So far, I'm only describing the middle part of those menus. The top and bottom portions are going to be covered in a later video. Radicals like square root are available as a pull-down in the Structures group. In addition to the common square root symbol, you can also enter a radical with degree, square root with degree, or cubic root. When you select one of them, the argument is created as a placeholder. You can put any expression there you'd like. To continue, though, onto the rest of the expression, you need to use right arrow to move the selection to be after the radical instead of within it. It may not look like anything changes, but actually it does with the right arrow key. Another thing to note is if something is selected, when you select the radical, it's placed inside the radical. In this case, the degree is left as another placeholder. If your work involves creating several expressions with radicals, there are keyboard shortcuts that are easy to remember. Square root uses the name of the square root function in many programming languages, so you would type \sqrt and then hit space so the square root is begun. Note that there's no line over it. You would type the expression and hit space and then the root is completed. Note that in this situation the cursor is actually outside the square root, so you don't need to right arrow. If you left arrow, then you're inside the expression and you can edit the square root, and then right arrow to go back outside of it. And if the argument of the square root is more complicated, you can use parentheses as grouping, and then when you hit space, they'll be combined with the desired argument. There's a situation that can be frustrating where you hit space to make the square root be recognized, and it just takes you outside of the math zone. To deal with that, you need to back arrow twice, and then hitting space will cause the square root to be recognized. That can happen with any of the abbreviations that are used at the end of the math region. You just need to left arrow twice. If your radical needs an index, there's an easy to remember option for that too. The syntax is \root root and then space, then the index of the radical, and then \of and another space. Then you can make the same expression and those unusual looking characters get converted into the final radical that you were looking for. There's a couple things to note. One is that the index can be as complicated as you need, and you won't need to use parentheses for grouping. However, for the argument, a complex expression will need parentheses. Now the expression the x plus 1 root of x squared plus 1 will get combined when I hit space. Radicals have very limited options in the context menus. First, when you right-click, you can remove the radical and keep the contents, or if you select the index, you'll be able to increase or decrease its size. This is a good point to mention that undo is fully available in the equation editor. You can use the undo button here or the Ctrl-Z command. In conclusion, for infrequent use of fractions or radicals, the structures group has pull-downs for the vast majority of the examples you need. Fractions and radicals are right here available. If you're using several fractions or square roots or other radicals, the keyboard has easy to remember shortcuts available. So use slash to form a fraction, use \sqrt to make a square root, and use \root \of to make an arbitrary radical. Thank you for watching.